Three dead in Macau after a day of gang violence. A new cabinet for Britain. And it's running in the rain for the first Chiang Mai Bridge Marathon. Good evening. 3 men have been shot dead in Macau in the latest spate of gang violence to hit the enclave. The men, one of who was a suspected triad, were gunned down in a car. It came just hours after police conducted a huge anti-triad sweep in 4 casinos. Derek Johnson reports.
5:30 this afternoon, more bloodshed on Macau's streets. 2 men on a motorcycle drew up alongside this car waiting in the rain at a set of traffic lights. Together they fired 4 shots at point-blank range. Inside were a driver and 2 passengers. Seconds later, the motorcycle was gone and the men lay dead or dying. All 3 were certified dead on arrival at hospital. Police say one of the men was a suspected triad, making it likely that this is the latest attack in what's become a turf war between rival gangs. Ironically, the deaths came hours after a huge anti-triad sweep involving 100 police officers. The targets were the enclave's 4 bustling casinos. Triad infiltration of the gambling scene is blamed for much of the violence. 100 suspects were arrested, so many the police laid on buses to take them away. Many turned out to be overstayers from China's neighbouring Zhuhai city. 2 arsons this morning were also being linked to gang vendettas. A car and a motorcycle set alight in one street. Elsewhere, another moped was torched. The police and judiciary have been accused of failing to bring the triads to book. Rarely are gang leaders arrested, let alone sentenced. Derek Johnson, TVB News.
Motorists took advantage of a free ride through the Western Harbour Tunnel today. But as Teresa Sue reports, it was a tour in the slow lane for those who took advantage of the no-toll day.
Car owners made their way to the toll booths early this morning. Usually they pay $30 to cross the Western Harbour Tunnel, but this time it was free plus a souvenir. Taxi drivers were also given the free ride. By noon, cars clogged the entrance of the new tunnel. Although this was meant to be a smooth ride, some cars with mechanical problems inside the tunnel led to more congestion. Cars moved slowly as the tailback extended all the way to the Tai Kok Tsui area, but some didn't seem to mind the wait. By 4:30, road diversions were in place. And heavy traffic from the Kowloon side of the tunnel led to congestion in the western and central districts. Roadblocks were in place on Canton Road. But traffic was smooth on the Eastern Harbour and Hong Kong tunnels. Teresa Sue, TVB News.
Singapore's Prime Minister Goh Chok Tong has met Chief Executive Designate Tung Chee-hwa. The meeting came a day before his scheduled talks with Governor Chris Patten. Goh's encounter with Tung was a private one. Neither man disclosed details to waiting reporters. Singapore has good relations with China, and Goh has just arrived from the Chinese mainland after completing a week-long visit. Britain's newly elected Labour Prime Minister has appointed all the members of his cabinet. There were few surprises in the lineup. Meanwhile, former Deputy Prime Minister Michael Heseltine has pulled out of the leadership battle for the Conservative Party because of health problems. Claire Pankett reports.
Prime Minister Tony Blair and his wife Sherry posed for the cameras after he put the finishing touches to his cabinet. Although there were few surprises, Blair made it clear he intends to push ahead with a radical programme of action. His lineup includes John Prescott as Deputy Prime Minister, Gordon Brown as Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Robertson, former Scottish Secretary, becomes Defence Secretary, Robin Cook is Foreign Secretary, Jack Straw, Home Secretary, Margaret Beckett is Trade and Industry Secretary. Mo Molan, who was appointed Northern Ireland spokeswoman, immediately paid a visit to Belfast for a walkabout. She reiterated the Conservatives' hardline stance over the peace talks. Sinn Féin is excluded until there's another IRA ceasefire. She also says there's no instant solution to the Troubles.
But all I can do is bring people together. All I can do is create a situation to encourage people to work together. And in the end, it's the people of Northern Ireland and the leaders of the political parties that will make the decisions. that I can create the parameters to help achieve that.
Meanwhile, Michael Heseltine, the former Tory Deputy Prime Minister, has been forced to pull out of his party's leadership battle after he was taken to hospital suffering from a mild angina attack. He's had heart problems in the past. The governor of Hong Kong, Chris Patten, has ruled himself out of the race, saying he wants to concentrate on writing a book about Asia after he leaves the territory. Claire Penkes, TVB News.
And Chris Patten will fly to London on the 17th of this month, and he's expected to brief the new Labour government on the imminent handover of Hong Kong. Derek Fatchett is tipped to be the Labour Minister of Hong Kong Affairs. He's reportedly said the democratic freedoms currently enjoyed by the colony must remain intact. Overseas, Zairean rebel leader Laurent Kabila has ordered his troops to fight on while President Mobutu Sese Seko considers whether or not to resign. Mobutu had reportedly offered to hand over power to an elected president, but Kabila insisted that the rebels be made the transitional authority, according to mediators at the shipborne summit. South Africa's Nelson Mandela will call a fresh round of talks between Zaire's Civil War foes in up to 10 days. Thousands have taken to the streets in Taipei, venting their frustration over the government's inability to stem violent crime. They protested throughout the day and officially finished at about 8 this evening, but about 200 students are still there, planning to stay overnight. The massive demonstration was fueled by the recent murder of a local celebrity's daughter.
Tens of thousands of demonstrators filled the streets, carrying placards with the words grief and anger. The feelings over crime are so strong that many are calling for President Lee Teng-hui to apologize and for Premier Li Yin-zhan to resign.
蛮失望的，所以我们一群学生愿意站出来，希望连战，我们希望能够倒戈，让连战下台。
很早就有这种心声了，可是只是没有机会表达而已。借着这个机会来充分的表达我们老百姓的心声，告诉政府说你们做的实在太差了。
A string of violent crime has swept through Taiwan over the last year, and just last week, the body of the 17-year-old daughter of popular actress Pai Pingping was found in a drainage ditch, mutilated. On Friday, President Lee, through his chief of staff, apologized for a worsening of social law and order. Premier Lien has not spoken publicly about Pai's murder. Today's protest is now known as the Walk for Taiwan. About 2,500 riot and military police are deployed along the route, which circles the presidential office and the executive yuan. More than 100 civic groups organized the march. Protesters also sent a message by stretching their bodies out along the presidential square, equating it with a tombstone.
Red Cross officials from North and South Korea will resume talks tomorrow morning on food aid for the North. In yesterday's meeting held in Beijing, South Korean Red Cross officials offered to begin deliveries of emergency food aid to the rival North. It was the first time in nearly 5 years that Red Cross officials from both nations had met. It's seen as a sign of the desperation in the communist North and a fear of its consequences in the capitalist South. A standoff between police and an American separatist group has ended peacefully. Saturday, 4 members of the group known as the Republic of Texas surrendered to police. 2 other armed members fled into the hills. Police are still searching for those men. For a week, the group has held police at bay. The standoff began when several group members took 2 neighbors hostage. The neighbors were later released. The group now faces multiple federal and state charges stemming from the kidnapping and ensuing standoff. Angry demonstrators were out in Perth to meet controversial Australian politician Pauline Hanson. Hanson, on a tour to promote her One Nation party, was jeered as she entered a venue in Perth. Despite the protests, the MP's popularity is soaring. Opinion polls show her level of support at 10%. Hanson sparked a race row in Australia after reports that she called non-white Australians mongrels. Hanson advocates a temporary halt to immigration and the overhaul of aid to Aborigines. Another country is giving the thumbs up to SAR passport holders. Today, Maldives officially becomes the 8th country to grant visa-free access to holders of the SAR passport. Officials there signed the agreement with Chinese officials today in Maldives. A new Hong Kong political party has officially been launched as of this afternoon. The Citizens Party unveiled their logo and their philosophy at a ceremony at the Hong Kong Convention Center. It currently has about 40 members, and as its name suggests, it wants to put the people first. party is headed by elected legislator Christine Low. Members say they are pro-democracy and place a great emphasis on the environment. Other high-profile legislators attended the ceremony. NCNA officials were also invited, but were reportedly too busy to attend. The future Secretary for Justice says proposals to tighten civil liberties will be ready to be handled by the provisional legislature in 2 weeks. She says the Executive Council first must sort out the details before the amendments are submitted. She also says the three-week consultation process, which has ended already, indicated a large measure of support, a far different view from local Democrats. On the anniversary of the May 4th movement, more than 100 demonstrators marched from Chater Garden to the Chief Executive Designate's office today. They protested against the proposals, which would ban groups that endanger national security and increase restrictions on protests. The May 4th movement is regarded as a renaissance of China's scientific and political movement. A teenager has died after a rescue effort in a reservoir in Yunlong. At around 6 this evening, the 18-year-old jumped into the Ho Poi Reservoir in Pat Hung, trying to retrieve his remote-control boat from the water. After more than an hour, police finally rescued the young man from the reservoir. He was unconscious at the time and was later pronounced dead at hospital. The teenager is the son of a senior Marine officer who was also on the scene at the time. Well, for some tourists in Thailand, their ship never came in. A ferry carrying 600 tourists sank after hitting a reef off Phuket. Passengers made their way to life rafts, and local fishermen aided in the rescue effort. Police say they believe all passengers have been rescued. There were no reports of serious injuries. Valuable collections at the Royal Academy of Arts in London have escaped damage after a fire. Over 100 firemen were called in to tackle the blaze. Dozens of people inside the building at the time were quickly led to safety. It's thought the fire started on the roof, where renovation work is being carried out. 2 galleries were affected, but none of the works of art were damaged because they had been removed due to the maintenance work. It'll now take a great deal of effort to get the galleries ready in time for next month's annual summer exhibition. And in sports, defying heavy rains and strong winds, Bashar Hussain of Britain triumphed in Hong Kong's Tsing Ma Bridge Marathon today. The world's longest rail and road suspension bridge was officially opened last week, and meanwhile, a local Over 35 veteran won the 10-kilometer race. James Legelia has the details.
32-year-old mathematics teacher Bashir Hussain won the first prize of $10,000 when he completed the inaugural event of the Tsing Ma Bridge in 2 hours, 25 minutes, 34 seconds. Hussain beat second place Peter de Voigt of Belgium and third place Chris Dogg of New Zealand. A relative newcomer with only 1.5 years of marathon experience, Hussain led the pack of 900 marathoners for most of the 42-kilometer route. His last triumph was the Manchester Marathon in 1996. Australia's Bev Lucas pulled off a surprise victory in the women's open category, winning in 2 hours, 52 minutes and 7 seconds after placing third in the Canberra Marathon only 3 weeks earlier. The 50-year-old mother of 5 kept a steady pace throughout the race to beat second place Jackie Newton of England and third place Terry Lee Farr of New Zealand. In the 10K run, veteran Kajal Deasing of Hong Kong triumphed at 32 minutes, 20 seconds. Chu Kwan, also of Hong Kong, won in the women's category.